The life jacket was on the floor next to Boots. Gregor shoved his arms through the straps and buckled it with shaking hands. The small flashlight, the one Mrs. Carmacci had given him, was in his pocket. He flicked it on. Maybe he could hold it between his teeth. Hands grabbed him as he climbed up the side of the boat. "Do not be a madman, Overlander," said Howard. "You cannot help her." "You make me sickest of all," said Gregor. "You were just down there a minute ago. You got rescued. And what about what you swore about saving anyone in water trouble? In peril? What you said, what about that?" Howard's face flushed. Gregor had touched a nerve. "Gregor," Luxa had his hand, "I forbid you to go, Gregor. You will not survive." "Not with you guys as a backup," said Gregor. He was so furious he could have thrown her over the side of the boat. See how she liked it down there. "Ripred brought her for me. He brought her to help me, so I could help you guys and your whole stupid kingdom," he said. "That's why we're doing this, right?" He stood on one of the seats and shone his light down in the water. Man, was he really going to jump down into that? They were right. It was insane. Even if he'd been the best Olympic swimmer in the world, he'd never swim his way out of that, especially pulling some big old rat. But he knew something else, too. He knew that the Underlanders needed to keep him alive at all costs. If he went in, they'd come after him. And if he could get to Twitch-Tip, they'd have to save them both. "Untie me!" Gregor said, Howard started lashing something around his body. "Untie me!" Gregor said, taking a swing at him. "It is a lifeline," Howard said, ducking the blow. "We will hold on to you from this end." "You will?" said Gregor. "Do not fight the current. It will have no effect. Ride it as best you can," said Howard. Gregor balanced on the edge of the boat for 1 second, stuck his flashlight between his teeth, braced himself, tried to forget about how much he hated high dives, and jumped. The shock of the cold water occupied him for about a millisecond before all of his attention was on the current. He was nothing. What? Jed's outside.
We're going to go for a walk.
Sorry, guys. He was nothing. A twig, a gum wrapper, an ant being carried along by the immense force of the whirlpool. He felt himself yanked back up by the rope. They had him from above. He was being lifted, swung out over the dark, sucking hole at the center of the whirlpool. For a moment, he had the crazy idea that they were going to drop him into it, and then he understood. Twitch-Tip was on the inner rings of the vortex. Maybe 1, maybe 2 more times around, and then she was gone. As they swung him in to meet her, Gregor tried to think of how he could get a hold of the rat. There was no time to work out a strategy. As he came in, he did the one thing that came naturally. He opened his arms. They smacked into each other, chest to chest. His arms encircled her neck, his legs wrapped around her body. Twitch-Tip dug her claws into the front of the life jacket. They spun around the whirlpool again. The current locked on them, pulling them down, not wanting to let them go. "They can't do it," thought Gregor. "We're going under." He squeezed his eyes shut tightly, waiting to be engulfed. Instead, there was a rib-crushing tug, and suddenly they were swinging free. Twitch-Tip's full weight hit him. If the rat hadn't gotten one claw embedded in the rope, he would have lost her. "Don't let go," she choked out. Gregor couldn't free his teeth from the flashlight. He had bitten down on it so hard. He did manage to open his mouth enough to say, "No." They were carried over the water for a while, until they were out of the whirlpool's reach. Then they were in the waves, half treading water, half using the life jacket to stay afloat, as the Underlanders reeled them in. Hands pulled them into the boat. When he felt the floor beneath him, he released the rat. They lay side by side, gasping, coughing up water. This was extra tricky for Gregor since his teeth were still stuck in his flashlight. His ribs hurt from the final tug that had freed them. He hoped they were just bruised, not broken. If they ached, the pain was minimal compared to his arm. The bandage had been torn away by the current, and Gregor could see it in all its glory. The whole forearm was badly swollen. The sucker wounds, which had turned a revolting shade of purple, oozed fluorescent green pus. They burned as if they were on fire. Howard was at his side. He helped Gregor free his teeth from the flashlight and laid it on the floor. Gregor had a funny memory. When Mrs. Carmacci had given him the flashlight, she had made a point of telling him it was waterproof. It even had a little sticker on the bottom that said so. He thought at the time that was silly. Why would he need a waterproof flashlight? Now he knew. Gregor gritted his teeth as Howard flushed out the wounds on his arm, poured a cooling solution over the skin, and bandaged it in fresh fabric. "I know this comes a bit late," said Howard, "but try to keep it dry." There was something in his eyes that reminded Gregor of Howard's grandfather, Vickis, an odd twinkle, even while the rest of his face remained serious. Gregor couldn't help laughing. "Yeah, I'll do that." Howard toweled off Twitch-Tip and wrapped her in blankets. She was too exhausted to object when he poured a bottle of medicine down her throat. She went to sleep almost immediately. "Is she all right?" Gregor asked him. "Yes, we must keep her warm. The cold water has been a shock. But she is a fighter," Howard said with respect. Boots came up and stuck a cookie in Gregor's mouth. "You wet." "Yeah," he said, spraying crumbs as he talked. "Boots go swim? We go swim?" she said hopefully. Gregor was glad she hadn't been able to see over the side of the boat. "Nah, it's too cold," said Gregor. "I tried it. It's too cold, Boots." Boots took a bite of a second cookie and poked the rest in Gregor's mouth. "Yesterday? We go yesterday?" She got time all mixed up. Yesterday, today, tomorrow, later, before, all pretty much meant any time that wasn't right now. "Maybe when we get home and it gets warm again, I'll take you to the pool, okay?" said Gregor. "Yes," said Boots. She patted his chest. "You wet." Gregor got on some dry clothes and wrapped himself up in a blanket. He had to take his boots off for a while. They were waterproof, but not in a whirlpool. The boat was packed now, with all 13 of them in it. Somehow everyone had found a place, but it was tight. Luxa sat next to Gregor and handed him something. "Here, I made you a sandwich." He looked down at the clunky version of a roast beef sandwich. He had taught her to make her first sandwich on their last trip. "Thanks." He didn't eat it. "Do not be angry with us, Gregor. Meredith and I have lost more than you know to the rats. It is hard for us to risk anything to save one, even if it is of use," said Luxa. "She. Twitch-Tip is a she, and she's had a bad time too. The rats chased her out because she's a scent seer, and she's been living all alone in the Deadland," said Gregor. "Has she?" asked Luxa. "I did not know this about her." "Well, no, because no one talks to her," Gregor said, and then he had a pang of guilt. He hadn't been talking to her either. He hadn't wanted to ride in her boat. At least he'd gone in to save her. "But she's incredible. You should see her in action, Luxa. I mean, maybe she didn't know what a whirlpool was, but she could tell all the way from the arena to the palace what color shirt Boots was wearing. And once we're in that labyrinth thing, I think she's the only way we'll find the Bane." His words were tumbling out now. He couldn't stop them, but he couldn't organize them quite right either. And Ripper had brought her. Vickis told me once he had wisdom. Wisdom unique. Well, more wisdom than, practically anyone, okay? So if he brought her, we must need her. And anyway, besides that, it's no good, Luxa. He paused to get it right. "It's no good to sit up in the boat and watch her drown." Gregor took a bite of the sandwich, more to stop talking than anything. It was all so confusing. The whole thing with the rats and the humans. They had killed Lux's parents, and he didn't know how many others she loved. Another thought struck him. Helping a rat doesn't make you like Henry, you know. You see it that way. Others might not, she said. They sat in silence while he ate his sandwich. He couldn't argue with her there. So that's the end of chapter 15. So what I want you to think about from chapters 13 and 14 is how much. Think of Luxa the first time we met her way back in book 1 when she wouldn't give, remember she met Boots and she's like, no, you'll have to be stronger or smarter than me to get it from her. And then, Boots ends up poking her in the eye. But how much has Luxa changed from that person that we knew to who we know now? Like, she made Gregor a sandwich. Before, she was like, royalty. I am royal. We do not make food. So kind of just reflect on that, like maybe give an example of how she's changed from the beginning of when we first met her to now. And you can respond to that in typing. All right, see ya.